All right, so this is part 2 of the endocrine lecture. We're beginning with the adrenal gland, also known as the suprarenal glands in your outline, letter D. So let's take a look at the regions of your suprarenal gland. We have an outer region called the cortex. So we have this region here. And then we have an inner region called the medulla. So they're going to secrete different hormones. And so let's begin with the cortex. The glucocorticoids is also known as cortisol. This is a long-term stress hormone. So long-term stress is basically the kind of stress that I think that we're all going through at the moment with this pandemic. It is over days, over weeks, over months, sometimes over years. So if you have a stressful job, if you are in a stressful relationship, you're taking human anatomy for this semester, these are all long-term stress, what's considered long-term stress. Short-term stress is an immediate thing, like if you're driving and someone swerves in front of you and you get a boost of adrenaline, that's short-term stress. Okay, so you're dealing with something immediate and you have to take action very, immediately. So I'm using the word immediate a lot. But long-term stress is not so much. So long-term stress, what this glucocorticoid does is so gluco refers to glucose, and it liberates glucose so that you have higher amounts of glucose in the bloodstream so that it's ready, right? So glucose is your energy source. Your cells need energy from the bloodstream. So if you have glucose in the bloodstream, your cells can readily take it up. However, long-term elevated levels of glucose is bad for your body. And so there's all kinds of sort of bad health outcomes from having too much of this hormone. So cortisol, this long-term stress hormone, is associated with, just a bad, sort of cardiovascular disease. It's associated with high blood pressure and stroke and things like that. So it's not a very good hormone to have in very high amounts for a long time. The evolutionary reason for it is to have your body ready, to have these glucose reserves ready for you to act. But that's glucocorticoids. So one of the side effects of these glucocorticoids is that it's immunosuppressive. So when you have a lot of this hormone in your bloodstream, it suppresses your immune system. So if you get sick when you are stressed out, this is the perfect sort of example of the action of this hormone. If you have a lot of this hormone, it doesn't allow your immune system to act as well, and you can get sick. This is actually one aspect of this hormone that we use for treatment. So hydrocortisone cream is named after the hormone cortisol, and you apply this, right? So what does hydrocortisone do? It treats rashes, it treats swelling from allergic reactions or bug bites. But that swelling and that reaction, the allergy, is actually your immune system. So your immune system creates these chemicals and it creates the swelling. So if you want to dampen down the immune system reaction, you're going to also dampen down the swelling and the itching and all the associated symptoms with that. So hydrocortisone is based on this hormone. Okay, so let's talk about the other one. Let's talk about the medulla. I'm sorry, I forgot mineral corticoids. So mineral corticoids is the salt balance. So from the cortex, this is going to mediate sodium salt balance in the body, and that's all you need to know about that one. The medulla, so I want to go back to a very early image, sorry for my scrolling here, to show you this. Okay, so remember that the hormones can be controlled by the nervous system, and there's only this one example of that. So this neuron, which lives in the hypothalamus, right, there's the soma, its very long axon goes all the way down to the adrenal medulla, and when the action potential reaches the medulla, it secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are known as adrenaline. So that's your adrenaline rush. And so you know that these are very fast-acting hormones. My example of someone kind of coming into your lane when you're driving and you might get or if someone stops short in front of you and you have to slam on your brakes, that adrenaline rush you get. You have this immediate surge of energy. Your heart starts beating faster. You start sweating. Everything just, it's an immediate, almost instantaneous reaction to the stress that's right in front of you. That quick reaction is because there's only one cell coming right from the brain into your adrenal medulla, releasing that hormone into the bloodstream. So it's very, very fast. And so this is what we call, instead of long-term stress, it's a short-term stress. Okay, so, and if you wanted to identify these fibers, right, this is going to be your fight or flight response fibers. I was trying to search for that. But the autonomic nervous system, right, the fight or flight, this is going to be your sympathetic fibers. So sympathetic fiber is going to come down into the adrenal medulla. Okay, so that's your one example of the nervous system there. So let's go look at the pancreas. All right, so the pancreas is a review, right? So the digestive system, we went over the pancreas. We'll just keep in mind that the pancreas has two functions. It has a digestive system. It's an accessory organ to the digestive system, and it secretes pancreatic juice. The pancreatic juice is created in the pancreatic acini, right? These circular units here. And these are your exocrine cells. These are the cells that will secrete substances into a duct, right? Eventually into the pancreatic duct, and then into the duodenum. The other collection of cells, the other region, is your pancreatic islets, otherwise known as islets and Langerhans, which look different on a histology slide, and they're going to contain a mixed population of cells as well. So from the cartoon at the very beginning of this lecture, I mentioned the beta cells, right? That cartoon mentioned beta cells because the beta cells, excuse me, are the ones that create insulin. The other hormone you should know that's created here is glucagon. These are alpha cells that create the glucagon. And I'm not going to really talk about somatostatin here or this one, letter F, but you should definitely know insulin and glucagon and their role. And again, if you look at their role, insulin is going, well, all I have in the outline is to regulate blood sugar, but in the digestive system, I did mention that insulin reduces blood glucose levels. So if you just ate a meal, the digestive system will put that sugar, glucose, into the bloodstream. Your cells are not able to utilize that sugar or absorb that sugar from the bloodstream without insulin. So insulin is responsible for taking that sugar from the bloodstream and putting into the cells, thereby reducing the amount of insulin in the blood, right? If you're taking it away from the blood, putting it into the cells, you're minimizing or reducing the glucose in the blood. The opposite is glucagon, right? So these are antagonistic hormones, again, dealing with glucose homeostasis. Glucagon is when you're hungry and your body needs energy. Glucagon will be liberated. Your pancreas will make glucagon. Glucagon goes into the bloodstream, and glucagon will act on the liver. So the liver will actually start to break down its glycogen stores. The glycogen, remember, is how we store glucose, and that glucose will be liberated into the bloodstream. So they are antagonistic hormones and made in two different kinds of cells within the islets and Langerhans. I just mentioned very briefly type 1 diabetes. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease, and only the beta cells are destroyed. So for some reason, in type 1 diabetes, the immune system seeks out these beta cells and destroys them. So your body, your pancreas, cannot make insulin. When you don't have insulin, when you eat something, that sugar stays in the bloodstream and your cells are starving. They don't recognize that sugar is there because there's no insulin. So there's lots of symptoms that are associated with type 1 diabetes. But one of the easiest things is a sugar urinalysis. They just look for elevated amounts of sugar in your blood. Sorry, elevated amounts of sugar in your urine. And that's an indicator that there might be something going on there. So that's type 1 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, let me mention that type 2 diabetes is more complicated because your cells are making insulin. It's the target end. They're not responding to the insulin. And type 2 diabetes is the kind of diabetes that people can get later in life from having sort of a diet that's very rich in sugar, from smoking, from not having adequate amounts of exercise. So it is very lifestyle. There's a lifestyle component to type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is usually the childhood onset, because if you have the autoimmune disease, you have it early on and it'll manifest early on. All right, so that's diabetes. Let's look at the thymus. The thymus is situated here. So we looked at the thymus with the lymphatic chapter, and the hormone that it makes is called thymosin, and thymosin helps to stimulate your T cells to mature, right? So remember, the T in T cells actually stands for thymus. So that's all we're going to talk about there. That's nice and quick. This is, okay, so the pineal gland, letter G in your outline, I don't have a picture for, but just remember the pineal gland secretes melatonin, and remember that melatonin regulates your circadian rhythm. The picture you have here is the heart. So the heart secretes a hormone called ANP, atrial natriuretic protein, or the P can also stand for peptide. This is a hormone that is going to lower the salt concentration. So the N, the natriuretic, that word is the old word for sodium. So that's why sodium on the periodic table is represented by Na, because the Na natriuretic is the old word for it. So when you secrete salt, water follows. So some of you guys probably already know that when you eat a lot of salt, you tend to retain water from the osmotic pressure, because the salt is a solute. It's going to draw in water through osmosis. If you excrete salt, this is a way that you can also lose water, because if you don't have that many solutes, you don't need that much water to balance it out. So it's a way that can mediate your blood pressure, because really that water content in the bloodstream is going to influence your blood pressure and your blood volume. So if you have high blood pressure or high blood volume, this hormone is going to secrete the salt in your body and help to reduce that water content. Okay, so that's ANP. Then our next one, the kidney and erythropoietin. We covered that in the urinary system, so I'm not going to talk about that. The gonads, we talked about this in the reproductive system, so I won't cover that again. And then just a couple of things on adipose here. There's a couple of another antagonistic set to wrap up with. This is leptin and ghrelin. So your adipose tissue makes a hormone. It's called leptin. Your stomach makes a hormone called ghrelin, and they moderate hunger. So let's take a look at before eating. If you're hungry, right? So ghrelin is going to make you feel hungry. Hunger is the amount of ghrelin in your body is more than the amount of leptin. So ghrelin is produced by the cells of the GI tract, and the more ghrelin you have, the more hungry you feel. After eating, the ghrelin level goes down and the leptin level goes up. So leptin, made by these adipose cells, are going to signal feeling full, which is being sated or satiety. So when you feel full and satisfied, that's due to leptin. So again, an antagonistic set of hormones. This is just a cute little experiment to how they figured out how leptin worked. So they have a mouse here with a normal diet. You can see the adipose tissue creating leptin. The leptin feeds back to the hypothalamus to make the mouse feel full, right? So in the brain, there's a neuron. The neuron has our leptin receptors, and there's leptin here. So when the leptin binds the receptors, the feeling is full and you stop eating. They did an experiment where they just basically destroyed the leptin receptor. So these scissors here are cutting the little Y, this green receptor. And so when those are gone, the mouse can be making leptin, but the leptin cannot be, the signal of leptin isn't able to be made in the brain, right? Because the receptor is not working. So there's never a signal that the mouse should feel full. And so the mouse continues to eat and gets a little heavier. So just a kind of an example of how scientists can get their information through research, right? So this is just one of those research experiments. Anyway, so this is our obese mouse, and to continue studying obesity and weight, there are obese mice that you can buy. So this is actually a genetically engineered obese mouse. This is a normal mouse. And just thought it was really cute. Good luck on your final exam. That's the end of the lecture. And if you have any questions, please contact me.